There's a real fish dish in China called squirrel fish, and it contains no squirrel whatsoever. It's a whole mandarin fish, deboned, scored into a crosshatch, deep fried until the flesh blooms outward like fur, and drowned in sweet and sour sauce. The name comes from the shape. And somewhere in Suzhou, right now, a chef is explaining to a tourist that no, there is no squirrel, while that same tourist is quietly convinced he's being lied to. This is the perfect place to begin, because Chinese cuisine is a thing almost nobody outside China actually understands, including the people most confident that they do. Let's get the big lie out of the way first. There is no such thing as Chinese food. I know, you ordered it last Friday. It came in a white box with a little metal handle. It had a fortune cookie taped to the bag. That wasn't China. That was a beautiful, greasy, deeply American fever dream wearing China as a costume. The actual country has not one cuisine, but a whole continent of them, regional traditions so different from each other that putting them under one umbrella makes about as much sense as inventing a single category called European food and serving paella, herring, and bratwurst on the same plate while insisting they're basically the same thing. They are not the same thing, and the people who cook them would like a word. China traditionally recognizes 8 great culinary traditions, and the moment you say that out loud in the wrong room, someone will tell you it should be 4 or 10, or that their grandmother's province was robbed of its rightful place on the list. But the official 8 are Cantonese, Sichuanese, Shandong, Jiangsu, Hunan, Fujian, Anhui, and Zhejiang. Each one thinks it is the soul of Chinese cooking. Each one is, privately, a little suspicious of the other 7. And the rivalry is not gentle. It is the kind of rivalry where entire cities will look at the way another city seasons a piece of fish and feel a deep, ancestral disappointment. Start with the Cantonese, because the Cantonese will not let you start anywhere else. Cantonese cuisine, from the south around Guangdong, is built on an obsession so pure it's almost a religion, the worship of freshness. The entire philosophy is that the best ingredient barely needs anything done to it. A truly good Cantonese chef is judged not by how clever his sauce is, but by how completely he stayed out of the way. The flavor of the ingredient is sacred. You steam the fish so its own taste survives. You add ginger and scallion and a whisper of soy, and then you stop, because doing more would be an insult to the fish, and the fish apparently has feelings. Cantonese cooks look at heavily sauced food the way a sommelier looks at someone pouring ice into red wine. They are too polite to say anything. They are saying everything with their eyes. This is where dim sum lives. And dim sum is not a dish. It is a civilization. The Cantonese tradition of yum, cha, literally drink tea, is the act of sitting for hours pushing little plates around a table while carts of steaming baskets roll past and you point at things and they appear. Har gao, the shrimp dumpling with the translucent skin so thin you can see the pink inside, and there is an actual rule, an unspoken law, that a proper har gao must have at least 7 pleats folded into its wrapper, and there are people who will count. They will count the pleats on your dumpling and judge your entire restaurant by the number. Char siu bao, the fluffy white bun that explodes with sweet roast pork. Egg tarts, siu mai, chicken feet, and yes, chicken feet, braised until they turn into something soft and gelatinous and weirdly addictive, and this is your first hint that the texture rules here are completely different from what you grew up with. Which brings us to a fight we need to have. Because Westerners have a texture problem, and the Chinese know it. In Western cooking, texture is sort of an afterthought. You want things crispy, or you want them tender, and that's basically the whole conversation. In Chinese cooking, texture is a full-fledged category of pleasure, ranked right alongside flavor, and there is an entire vocabulary for sensations Western menus don't even have words for. There's QQ, which describes a bouncy, springy, elastic chewiness, the thing that makes a good fish ball or a tapioca pearl satisfying in a way that has nothing to do with taste. There's the prized slipperiness of certain noodles, the deliberate gelatinous wobble of braised tendon, the crunch that has to be exactly the right kind of crunch. To a Chinese diner, a sea cucumber or a piece of jellyfish or a chicken foot isn't weird. It's a texture experience, and the fact that it tastes of almost nothing is the point. Meanwhile, the Western tourist is poking it with a chopstick going, but what does it do? It doesn't do anything. It feels. Learn the difference. Now let's go to Sichuan, and let's go fast, because Sichuan does not believe in subtlety, and neither should we. If Cantonese cooking is a quiet monk, respecting the natural flavor of a fish, Sichuan cooking is that same fish being kidnapped, set on fire, and made to confess. The defining sensation of Sichuan cuisine is mala, and mala is 2 words doing 2 jobs. La is the heat, the burning chili pepper, the part you were expecting. But ma is the surprise, the numbing, tingling, slightly electric buzz that comes from the Sichuan peppercorn, which is not actually a pepper at all, but a tiny dried husk that makes your lips and tongue go pleasantly, alarmingly numb. The genius of Sichuan food is the combination. The numbness disables your mouth's alarm system right as the chili floods in, so you can keep eating heat that should by all rights have stopped you 3 bites ago. It's a chemical trick, it's borderline diabolical, and the people of Chengdu eat it for breakfast and feel sorry for the rest of us. Out of Sichuan comes mapo tofu, a dish with a name that translates more or less to pockmarked old woman's tofu, named after the supposedly scarred-faced woman who first cooked it in a humble little eatery and accidentally invented one of the most beloved dishes on earth. It's soft tofu and minced meat swimming in a fiery, oily, deep red sauce, and the contrast of the silken, trembling tofu against the brutal, numbing burn is the entire poetry of it. And here is where the regional war flares up, because someone from outside Sichuan will inevitably make mapo tofu mild, will reduce the chili, will leave out the peppercorn entirely, and a Sichuanese person will look at that pale, gentle, frightened little bowl and quietly mourn. To them, it's not a softer version, it's a forgery. It's wearing the dish's name without the dish's courage. While your mouth is still recovering, let's talk about the single greatest cultural fact about Chinese cuisine, which is that it does not actually trust your obsession with the autentico as much as you do, and yet everyone is obsessed anyway. Because here's the thing about that word authentic. Half the dishes you think are fake were real somewhere, and half the dishes you think are real are recent inventions, and the line between them is blurrier than anyone wants to admit. Take the fortune cookie. The fortune cookie does not exist in China. It never did. Go to Beijing, go to Shanghai, go to the deepest, most traditional restaurant in Guangzhou, and ask for a fortune cookie, and they will look at you like you asked for the dessert that comes with a little American flag. The fortune cookie was almost certainly invented in California, likely by Japanese immigrants, and then adopted wholesale by Chinese-American restaurants because the customers loved them. It is a symbol of Chinese food worldwide that has nothing to do with China. And there's a famous, beautiful irony where a company tried exporting fortune cookies to China, and people were baffled, because why is there paper in my cookie? Then there's chop suey, the dish that for decades was Chinese food in America, the thing your grandparents ordered, a pile of stir-fried odds and ends in a thick brown sauce. The name comes from Cantonese words meaning, essentially, assorted leftover bits, and the dish was born in the diaspora, cooked by Chinese immigrants in America with whatever was around, possibly to feed homesick laborers, possibly invented on the spot for a confused customer. The legends contradict each other gloriously. It became wildly popular precisely because it tasted like nothing too challenging. And to this day, if you describe chop suey to someone who grew up in China, you'll get a polite, blank, faintly concerned expression. And while we are demolishing myths, let's deal with the big one, the one your uncle still believes. The so-called Chinese restaurant syndrome, the idea that MSG, monosodium glutamate, gives you headaches and makes you sick. This was a panic built on almost nothing, kicked off by a single letter to a medical journal in the 1960s, and it spread like wildfire, and for decades menus proudly advertised no MSG, as if announcing they didn't use poison. The reality is that MSG is just the salt of glutamate, the same savory compound that occurs naturally in tomatoes, in Parmesan cheese, in mushrooms, in your beloved aged steak. Decades of actual research have found no consistent evidence that normal amounts cause any of it. The whole thing has a faint and uncomfortable whiff of suspicion aimed at a foreign cuisine more than at a molecule. But try telling that to the guy who insists he can feel the MSG. He felt it before he ate it. He felt it in the parking lot. If you're enjoying watching me set fire to everything you assumed was true, do the little thing, the like, the subscribe, whatever the button situation is on your screen, because we are about to get into Hot Pot, and I have strong opinions about how people ruin it. There, that's the whole pitch. Back to the food. Hot Pot. Hot Pot is not a meal. It is an event, a contact sport, a social negotiation conducted over a pot of boiling broth in the center of the table. You get a simmering cauldron, sometimes split down the middle into 2 flavors because somebody at the table is a coward and wants the mild side. And then you cook your own raw ingredients in it. Thin sliced meat, vegetables, noodles, tofu, fish balls, dropping things in and fishing them out and arguing the entire time about whether that piece of beef has been in long enough. Chongqing Hot Pot, from Sichuan territory, is a violent, oily, numbing red broth that will hurt you and that you will thank for it. And the unspoken rules of Hot Pot are vast and treacherous. You do not just throw everything in at once like an animal. There's an order. Hard vegetables and things that need time go in early. Delicate slivers of meat go in for seconds and come out. And the person who dumps the leafy greens in too soon and turns them into sad green sludge will be remembered for it. There's also the eternal sauce debate, the sesame-based dip of the North versus the oil and garlic dip of the South. And people are loyal to their dip the way they're loyal to a football club. Let's go north, because the North has been quietly running the show for a very long time. Shandong Cuisine, from the eastern coast, is one of the oldest and most influential of all the traditions, the backbone of northern cooking, and a huge influence on the food of the imperial court. Shandong is the master of technique, of frying, of producing consommes and clear broths so crystalline they look like water and taste like the concentrated essence of everything good. There's a Shandong stock so prized and so labor-intensive that the saying goes the broth is the soul of the chef, and a master will clarify it using ground chicken and other tricks until it is shockingly clear and shockingly deep, and this is the kind of invisible mastery that never photographs well and therefore never goes viral, which is its own quiet tragedy. And the North is also where we draw the single most important line in all of Chinese food, the line that explains more than any other, the line between rice and wheat. Here is the great North-South divide. The South, warm and wet, grows rice, and in the South, rice is the foundation, the thing a meal is, built around the quiet white center of the plate. The North, colder and drier, grows wheat, and so the North eats noodles, steamed breads, and dumplings. This is not a small detail. This is the fault line that explains why the food feels so different from one end of the country to the other, and why a Southerner and a Northerner can both be eating Chinese food and be having two completely unrelated experiences. Tell a Northerner that a meal isn't complete without rice and they'll laugh. Tell a Southerner that you ate steamed buns for dinner and they'll ask where the actual food was. Out of the North and its wheat comes one of the most jaw-dropping things any cook does anywhere, the hand-pulled noodle. A single lump of dough, stretched and folded and stretched and folded, doubling the strands each time. 2 becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16, until from one piece of dough a master pulls hundreds of impossibly thin, even noodles in about a minute, by hand, with a casual showmanship that suggests this is not difficult, which is a lie. It is monstrously difficult. People train for years and still produce dough that snaps. Watching it done well is genuinely hypnotic. And Lamian, those pulled noodles, especially in the famous beef noodle soup associated with Lanzhou, are a whole devotional practice. And of course there's a fight here too, because the Lanzhou beef noodle soup has rules so strict they're nearly scripture. The broth must be clear, the radish white, the chili oil red, the cilantro green, the noodles yellow. A specific harmony of colors and a bowl that gets it wrong is not really the dish, it's just soup wearing the dish's clothes. Now I have to talk about the dumpling situation, because it's a minefield and people die on these hills. In the North, the jiazi, the boiled or pan-fried dumpling, is so central that it's the food of celebration, the thing families gather to fold together for the new year, wrapping coins or good wishes inside, and the shape itself is meant to evoke old gold ingots, so eating them is eating prosperity. But then in the South, in Shanghai, you get the xiaolongbao, and the xiaolongbao is a magic trick disguised as food. It's a small soup dumpling, a delicate pleated parcel that contains not just filling but hot liquid soup, actual broth, sealed inside the dough. How do you get liquid into a dumpling? You don't pour it in, you make the broth, you chill it until it sets into a jelly. You wrap the solid jelly inside with the meat, and then the steam melts it back into liquid. So when you bite in, carefully, there's a flood of scalding soup waiting. And there is a correct way to eat one, and getting it wrong is a small public humiliation. You lift it gently so it doesn't tear. You rest it on your spoon. You nibble a tiny hole to let the steam out. You sip, and only then do you eat the rest. The number of tourists who have bitten straight into a xiaolongbao and launched a jet of molten soup directly down their own shirt is, frankly, a public health statistic. Let's slow down and talk about the most theatrical dish China has, the Peking duck, because the duck is not cooked so much as it is staged. This is a dish with the production values of an opera. The duck is specially raised, then air is pumped under its skin to separate it from the flesh. It's coated and glazed and hung and dried and roasted until the skin turns to lacquered glass, shatteringly crisp and mahogany dark, and the entire point, the holy grail, is that skin. In the grand version, a chef carves it tableside into a precise number of pieces, the crisp skin served sometimes on its own with a little sugar, the meat wrapped in thin pancakes with scallion and cucumber and a sweet bean sauce. And there are restaurants in Beijing that have been roasting duck for over a century and a half, where the technique is guarded like a state secret, and a true devotee will tell you the skin should be so crisp it makes a sound, and if it doesn't make the sound, what are you even doing? By now, you might be sensing the pattern, the thing that actually unites all this chaos, which is that every single one of these dishes is somebody's hill to die on. Nobody in China agrees on anything about food except that the other guy is doing it wrong. And nowhere is this more savage than the next stop. So let's go to Hunan, because Hunan is tired of Sichuan getting all the credit for being spicy. Hunan cuisine has a quiet theory about it on the subject of heat. The world hears Chinese food spicy and thinks Sichuan, and the Hunanese would like to point out that their food is, if anything, hotter, just hot in a different key. Where Sichuan is about the numbing mala, the complex tingling burn, Hunan heat is more direct, drier, purely fiery, fresh and dried and pickled chilies used with a kind of fearless abundance, no anesthetic, no numbing safety net, just clean, clear heat that means it. It's the difference between a burn that distracts you and a burn that confronts you. And a Hunanese cook watching people fawn over Sichuan as the home of spice has the exact energy of a brilliant older sibling watching the younger one get praised for something they both do better. Let's swing over to the eastern coast for Jiangsu and Zhejiang cuisine, because after all that fire you need the opposite, and the opposite is sweet. The cooking around Shanghai, Suzhou, Hangzhou is famous or infamous for its sweetness and its delicacy, for slow braising, for elaborate knife work, for dishes that look like they belong in a museum. This is where you find that squirrel fish we started with, the one shaped like fur and named after an animal that isn't in it. This is where you find red braised pork belly, dongpo pork, named after a poet, glistening cubes of pork cooked so long in soy and sugar and wine that the fat turns to silk and the whole thing trembles. And the rest of China teases the Jiangnan region, mercilessly for putting sugar in everything, for sweetening dishes that other regions think have no business being sweet. And the people of Shanghai bear this teasing with the serene confidence of people who know their food is delicious and simply do not care what Sichuan thinks. Fujian cuisine, down on the southeast coast, is the one even a lot of food lovers can't quite describe. And it deserves a moment, because it's a master of soup and of the ocean and of a sweet and sour balance all its own, with a love of seafood and a use of fermented fish sauces and wine that goes deep. Its most legendary dish has a name so dramatic it sounds invented. Buddha jumps over the wall. The story goes that the smell of this rich, complex stew, packed with dozens of premium ingredients simmered for ages, was so irresistible that a meditating monk leapt over a temple wall to get a taste, abandoning his vegetarian vows and quite possibly his enlightenment. That's not a recipe, that's a marketing campaign from 1,000 years ago, and it worked, because here we are still talking about it. Anhui Cuisine, the one nobody outside China can name, gets overlooked constantly, and its whole thing is wild, foraged, mountain ingredients, herbs and bamboo shoots and wild mushrooms and a use of the forest that the more famous coastal cuisines simply don't have. It's the introvert of the eight, the one that didn't conquer the world's takeout menus, the one that's a little resentful, probably watching Cantonese and Sichuan become global brands while it sits there with the best wild mushrooms anyone's ever had and no marketing department. Step back from the regional brawling for a second, because there's a philosophy underneath all of it that the fighting actually obscures. The thing holding the whole sprawling mess together is an old idea about harmony and balance, inherited from Confucian and Taoist thought. The notion that a meal should balance its flavors and its energies. That food is not just fuel, but a kind of medicine. That ingredients carry hot or cold properties that have nothing to do with temperature, and everything to do with how they're believed to act on the body. This is why an old relative might tell you not to eat too much of something heating when you're already irritable, or push a cooling soup on you in summer. And this isn't folklore they picked up. It's a system thousands of years deep, where the kitchen and the pharmacy were never really separated. The same logic explains the reverence for tea, not just as a drink, but as a digestive, a ritual, a counterweight, the thing that cuts the grease and resets the palate and turns a meal into a ceremony. And this is the part that should genuinely reframe everything, the sheer, dizzying age of it. This is not a cuisine with a long history, this is arguably the longest continuous culinary tradition on the planet. Thousands of years of unbroken refinement, techniques and ideas and dishes, evolving across dynasties while empires rose and collapsed around the kitchen. The wok, the cleaver, the mastery of fire, the philosophy of balance. This stuff has been getting perfected for longer than most countries have existed. When you eat a properly made Chinese dish, you are eating the end point of an absurdly long experiment. Thousands of years of cooks arguing, exactly like they're still arguing now, about the right way to do it. Which brings us all the way back to wok hei, the breath of the wok, maybe the most poetic concept in the whole tradition and the one that explains why your home stir-fry never tastes like the restaurant. Wok hei is the smoky, charred, almost indescribable flavor that only appears when a wok is screaming hot, hot enough that oil and food and the surface of the metal interact in a flash. The food tossed constantly so it sears without stewing. It requires a burner so powerful it's basically a jet engine, far beyond what a normal kitchen can produce, and a cook with the wrist and timing to keep everything moving in the flames. It is the single biggest reason the same recipe tastes like a revelation in a good restaurant and like sad warm vegetables at home. You cannot buy wok hei. You cannot fake it. You can only stand near a fire that frightens you and learn. So no, there is no such thing as Chinese food. There's a whole universe of it. 8 great traditions and 1,000 smaller ones. All of them certain they're right. All of them mildly disappointed in each other. Rice in the south and wheat in the north. Numbing fire in Sichuan and clean fire in Hunan and reverent steam in Guangzhou and unapologetic sugar in Shanghai. And a duck in Beijing being treated like visiting royalty, and a soup dumpling waiting patiently to scald the next tourist who doesn't know the rules. And the fortune cookie isn't even invited. The truth is, the disagreement is the point. It's a cuisine that has spent thousands of years refusing to settle on a single answer because there isn't one. There's just the next dish, and the next argument about the next dish, and a grandmother somewhere insisting that all of you are doing it wrong and she alone knows the truth. And she's probably right. That's the maddening thing, she probably is. If any of this made you hungry or made you reconsider that white takeout box a little differently, hit like and subscribe, and we'll keep eating our way through the rest of it. There's a lot left. There's always a lot left.